Do you truly think that to accumulate more wealth, you have to labor more intensely? What if I were to inform you that this is the most significant falsehood you've ever been fed? Actually, paradoxically, the more you exert yourself, the less you accrue. It seems absurd, doesn't it? However, consider this: you weren't destined for prosperity. You were shaped merely for existence. Now, envision if I could unveil to you how to recalibrate your cognitive processes, enabling you to attract riches as effortlessly as you draw in fiscal obligations? Over numerous years, I contemplated why certain individuals appeared to magnetize capital so seamlessly, while others, as I once was, dwelled on the precipice, engulfed in liabilities, toiling excessively, yet barely managing to sustain themselves. And do you know what is even more unsettling? The majority of these individuals, who exert so much effort, are astute, committed, and deserving. Yet, they persist in being confined within the identical cyclical pattern. The crux of the matter was never a dearth of commitment. The quandary lies in the fact that we were never enlightened about an invisible schema functioning within the depths of our minds, what we term a paradigm. And this paradigm, residing within the subconscious, meticulously dictates the extent to which you believe you are capable of earning, and consequently, the sum you will realistically attain. When a person vocalizes, "I scarcely settle one bill before another descends," they are not merely portraying their existence, they are unveiling the mental blueprint governing their outcomes. They are oscillating at the frequency of scarcity. And the universe, which acknowledges vibration rather than aspirations, straightforwardly dispatches an augmentation of the same. This paradigm commences its formation even preceding your genesis. Indeed, it initiates during gestation, with what your mother perceived, encountered, and felt. Subsequently, it is fortified through your upbringing. Money doesn't proliferate on trees. Do you presume you're affluent? One cannot possess everything in life. You incessantly absorb, assimilate, and when you realize it, you are existing precisely within these convictions. Yet, this is not attributable to your culpability. What is at stake here is not intelligence, nor aptitude, it is mental coding. And analogous to any coding, it is susceptible to alteration, albeit it necessitates exposure. Because until you attain awareness of this, you proceed on autopilot, reiterating the identical narrative, albeit with disparate temporal markers. The preponderance of individuals harbors trepidation towards transformation. They ponder, what if it proves unsuccessful? But what if it flourishes? What if you are an adjustment away from a completely novel existence? I underwent this firsthand. I lacked a diploma, resided in debt, and each day was an arduous struggle. Until one day, in a juncture of profound despair, I resolved that I could no longer perpetuate in that manner. It was at that juncture that I commenced scrutinizing how the intellect functioned. I ascertained that the subconscious does not differentiate between veracity and what is reiterated. And it was at this juncture that everything transformed. I commenced reiterating novel concepts, daily, reiteration, visualization, sentiment. Initially, it appeared absurd, as though I was deceiving myself. Yet, I persisted, and gradually, my vibration transmuted. The individuals encircling me altered. Prospects commenced to manifest. And when I perceived it, I was accruing more in a month than I formerly accrued in a year, and preeminently, without working myself to exhaustion. Now, I pose to you, how frequently have you discovered yourself at the conclusion of the month, uncertain as to how you will defray all expenses? How frequently have you contemplated that capital vanishes from your account? This does not transpire by happenstance, it materializes because your paradigm was fashioned to repulse capital as soon as it arrives. You may even succeed in attracting a quantity, but if the paradigm embodies scarcity, it will contrive to expel that capital. The auspicious tidings are that this is reversible. You can commence forthwith. Cease and contemplate. What are the phrases you most commonly overheard concerning capital? Record them. Subsequently, interrogate yourself, is this irrefutable veracity, or merely a reiteration of what others espoused? Your intellect has been conditioned to operate within a restriction, yet it can also be instructed to expand. And when you transmute what is within the subconscious, what is within your financial institution commences to mirror this. It is inconsequential from whence you originated. What is consequential is what you elect to embrace as veracity from this juncture onward. Should you pledge to transmute this paradigm, everything encompassing you will commence to transmute, not instantaneously, but consistently. Initiate small, a phrase, a thought, a daily visualization, and persist, do not cease. Because what you contemplate, perceive, and espouse is fashioning at this very moment the quantity of abundance you are permitting to infiltrate your existence, and you merit significantly more than what you have embraced until now. Have you ever become cognizant that the aspects you most apprehend are precisely those that most frequently befall you? That perpetual concern of a deficiency of capital, of an inability to defray expenses, of forfeiting employment, or of an incapacity to secure a promotion? And the most peculiar aspect is that, despite your endeavors to circumvent these circumstances, they persist in emerging. This is not serendipitous, this is attraction. What you perceive with intensity, what you espouse profoundly, you attract. You may even aspire to be opulent, but if internally you perceive apprehension, dearth, or insecurity concerning capital, this is what you will persist in manifesting, because your authentic vibration resides not in what you articulate, but in what you incessantly perceive, even when no one is observing. Behold, everything within the cosmos is energy, I, you, capital, objects, thoughts, everything vibrates at a determinate frequency, and the universe responds to your frequency, not to your aspiration. Thus, if you contemplate affluence, yet perceive it as distant, improbable, or arduous, conjecture what? You harmonize with the difficulty and attract even more impediments. It was when I comprehended this that everything transmuted. I discerned that I did not necessitate pursuing capital, I necessitated transforming into an individual who attracts capital organically, akin to a magnet, and for this, I necessitated aligning thought, sentiment, and action with what I aspired to attract. You are presumably acquainted with someone who, even without ostensible exertion, appears to possess fortune in all endeavors, secures auspicious commercial agreements, encounters prospects, receives assistance at the opportune moment, and you are also acquainted with that other archetype of individual who, despite exerting considerable effort, is perpetually almost there, yet something invariably transpires adversely. This is not fortune or misfortune, this is vibration. One of the most potent instances I have witnessed was that of Jim Carrey. Preceding his fame, he was insolvent, and despite this, daily he drove to an elevated vantage point in Los Angeles, gazed upon the city, and envisioned himself as a triumphant actor. He inscribed for himself a symbolic check for $10 million United States dollars for acting services rendered and placed it within his wallet. Years subsequently, he garnered precisely that sum for a cinematic production. He did not confine himself to dreaming, he perceived it as though it were already veritable, and the cosmos responded. However, behold, this is not sorcery, this is science applied with unwavering faith. Neuroscience already demonstrates that the cerebrum does not differentiate between the veritable and the intensely envisioned, and quantum physics has already substantiated that the observer influences reality. When you envision with emotion, your cerebrum commences to forge novel interconnections, your corporeal form transmutes frequency, and you transition, even if subconsciously, toward that which you desire. The predicament resides in the fact that the preponderance of individuals visualizes, albeit with apprehension, with dubiety, with suspicion. They solicit an ameliorated existence, but in the identical instant, they sabotage themselves, contemplating, this is not intended for me, I am uncertain how this would be plausible, it is appurtenant to affluent individuals, and consequently, the cosmos responds, okay, that's correct, it is not intended for you. You necessitate comprehending this once and for all, you do not necessitate knowing how everything will transpire, you merely necessitate aligning your vibration with what you desire and adhering to the impulses that will surface. The pathway is constructed as you traverse. But if you persist in vibrating apprehension, you will solely attract more of what sustains you in apprehension. I myself have already endured circumstances in which everything appeared forsaken, commercial ventures that were capsizing, accounts that did not reconcile, and instead of despairing, I would occlude my vision and envision that everything was already resolved. I would compel myself to perceive gratitude for something that had not yet materialized, and that transmuted my vibration. I would perceive tranquility, confidence, and the solutions would materialize, occasionally in manners I could never have anticipated. You possess this power. It is inconsequential how indebted you are presently. It is inconsequential if you do not possess a single cent in your possession. What is consequential is what you elect to perceive and espouse from this juncture onward, because the cosmos responds to your vibration and not to your bank reconciliation. Undertake the subsequent exercise, preceding your nocturnal repose today. Inhale deeply, occlude your vision, and envision how your existence would be should everything be precisely as you desire. However, envision with meticulous detail, perceive, behold, palpate, enter into that frequency. Undertake this for 5 minutes, daily. You will perceive, in a brief duration, subtle alterations transpiring, an unexpected telephonic communication, a novel concept, an improbable coincidence. These are the indications, adhere to them. Because when you transmute your vibration, reality possesses no option, it necessitates transmuting as well. There exists a conviction profoundly entrenched within society that articulates that, to garner more capital, it is imperative to exert more labor. This notion has been reiterated so frequently that it has transmuted into a non-scripted regulation of existence, but I desire to prompt you to reflect earnestly now. How many individuals do you know who labor assiduously, awaken prematurely, slumber belatedly, and yet subsist in fiscal constraint? And how many have you witnessed who appear to subsist with greater latitude, accrue more, but are not perpetually racing as though existence were a contest without a designated terminus? This is not a coincidence, it is the consequence of two entirely disparate modes of mentation. The primordial is predicated upon physical exertion and subsistence, the subsequent upon mental acumen and vibrational alignment. The disparity resides in the stratum of cognizance in which these individuals operate. I assimilated in the most arduous manner that excessive physical exertion is not synonymous with triumph. I would labor exhaustively, execute more than requisite, accumulate functions, but at the termination of the month, all that I possessed was lassitude. The financial institution barely fluctuated. Until one day, in one of the most disillusioning junctures of my existence, I perceived that there existed a disparate manner of existing. You were not fashioned to be a machine of exertion, you were fashioned to be a conduit of cognizant creation. The veritable contest is not who labors more, it is who contemplates more effectively, who vibrates accurately, who comprehends that capital is not the consequence of perspiration, it is the consequence of frequency, mentality, and aligned determinations. And here is the pivotal juncture: you can garner more, executing less, should you labor with acumen and strategy, and not merely with the corporeal form. Ponder the millionaires, the majority of them possess multiple revenue streams, not merely a single employment. They invest, engender assets, construct systems that function even when they are reposing. They comprehended that affluence resides in the flux, not in the force. The preponderance of individuals, however, was coded to contemplate linearly. More hours of labor equate to more capital, solely that this possesses a restriction. Your temporal capacity is restricted, your corporeal form as well. And if you persist in attempting to fabricate capital solely with exertion, you will collide with a threshold, sooner or later. Now, when you transmute the emphasis to how to contemplate, how to determine, how to position yourself, you commence to perceive prospects that were formerly imperceptible, you transition to acting disparately, and this disparity in attitude transmutes everything encircling you. That is what I executed. I desisted pursuing capital and commenced scrutinizing how affluent individuals contemplated, how they determined, how they conducted themselves, and I adapted this to my verity. The outcome? I commenced to attract concepts, individuals, and avenues that had never materialized prior, not because they were non-existent, but because I was not at the accurate vibration to perceive them. Should you be there, depleted, surmising that the sole recourse is to labor more, embrace this invitation, commence contemplating disparate manners of generating value, perhaps a talent that you relinquished, a pastime that could transmute into revenue, a connection that you could cultivate, a novel aptitude that you could assimilate, rather than executing supplementary hours in something that drains you. Cease for a moment and gaze around you. The realm is replete with individuals subsisting with greater latitude and abundance because they determine to contemplate disparately, and the most cruel aspect is that I am acquainted with narratives of individuals who, even with diplomas, with stability, persist in being despondent, because they espouse that that is how it must be, that is how one garners existence. But no one was born merely to garner existence. We were born to subsist genuinely, and subsisting genuinely commences when you cease accepting that the sole manner of prospering is by sacrificing oneself until the ultimate fiber of energy. You can indeed engender revenue streams with levity, you can attract inspired concepts, you can be more adequately remunerated for fewer hours. But for this, you must embrace a novel paradigm. Your worth does not reside in your physical exertion, it resides in your capacity to envision, determine, and act with cognizance. You do not necessitate perpetuating and exerting yourself increasingly more to possess increasingly less, you solely necessitate executing one stride, commencing to labor with the intellect and not against it, because the intellect is the veritable expanse where affluence is sown, and should you assimilate to cultivate it, the fruits will materialize, from all aspects. Have you ever noted how, at times, you commence something novel with all the elation in the realm, but subsequent to a few days, you simply cease? Be it a novel financial objective, a schema to economize, to inaugurate a commercial venture, to commence investing, to transmute careers, initially you are animated, you perceive that it will flourish, but abruptly something internally commences to vacillate, to procrastinate, to fabricate pretexts. And when you perceive it, you are already back precisely in the identical juncture as constantly. It is as though something imperceptible were pulling you back toward the aged verity, and do you know what that is? It is your subconscious. It does not desire for you to become opulent, it does not desire for you to transmute, it desires to sustain you precisely where you are, because for the subconscious, transmutation signifies risk, and it was coded to safeguard, not to expand. The predicament resides in the fact that this protection has transmuted into sabotage, and the preponderance of individuals does not even perceive it. The subconscious does not function with logic, it functions with habits, emotions, and reiteration. It records patterns since you were a child and executes those patterns automatically, daily. And if those patterns articulate that capital is arduous, affluence is for the few, or you are not capable, then that is what you will experience, regardless of how much you desire the contrary. That is why perusing books or beholding videos concerning prosperity is insufficient. You may even perceive motivation for a duration, but if your internal paradigm does not transmute, your reality will not transmute either. It will be akin to applying perfume to soiled attire. It appears disparate for a moment, but the underlying odor persists the identical. And it was precisely that which I perceived when, years prior, already immersed within this cosmos of personal development, I commenced to confront junctures in which everything appeared to seize. I possessed knowledge, possessed technique, possessed strategy, but something imperceptible was still restricting me, an aged pattern, tacit, but potent, and it was at that juncture that I determined to confront the veritable challenge, to reprogram my subconscious intellect. I recollect a specific diurnal juncture. I was solitary, nocturnally, and commenced to heed my own intellect articulating that I was insufficient, that all of that was excessively colossal for me, that perhaps it would be ameliorated to relinquish. It was as though the articulation of all the limitations that I had overheard my entire existence were congregated there, in a sole juncture. But instead of contending against that, I reposed, occluded my vision, and commenced to reiterate, in a subdued tone, I am prosperous, I am dignified, I am capable. I reiterated again, and again, and again, until my corporeal form ceased to quiver, until the weeping transmuted to serenity, until I perceived that something within me had commenced to transmute. And from that point onward, I was never the identical, not because everything transmuted instantaneously, but because I transmuted, and the internal transmutation commenced to alter the responses that I provided to the realm, and the realm, therefore, commenced to respond to me disparately. The subconscious is excessively potent to be disregarded. It governs up to 95% of your determinations. It delineates what you envision as an opportunity, what you apprehend, what you circumvent, and even what you attract. Therefore, if you aspire to transmute your existence, you cannot execute that solely with willpower. You necessitate emotional and cognizant reiteration. You necessitate nourishing your intellect with novel images, novel articulations, novel sentiments, daily, even when it appears that nothing is transmuting. And I am cognizant that, initially, it will appear eccentric, it will appear that you are prevaricating to yourself, but it is precisely that which indicates that the process is functioning, because your ancient self will resist, it will endeavor to pull you back, and there you necessitate perpetuating and visualizing, affirming, espousing, until your subconscious embraces the novel narrative. The authentic transformation does not transpire externally, it transpires internally. It is tacit, it is imperceptible, but when it transpires, the entire realm commences to reorganize around you. Disparate individuals emerge, novel concepts surface, avenues unclose. Thus, if you aspire to rewrite your financial narrative, commence here, observe the thoughts that reiterate within you, interrogate the convictions that have perpetually appeared as absolute verities, supersede the articulations of dubiety with articulations of affirmation, envision your ideal existence daily, even if it appears distant, because the more you reiterate, the more your subconscious will embrace, and when it embraces, it will act in your favor, and no longer against you. That is the key that few possess the courage to utilize, but who utilizes, never reverts to being the identical. You do not attract what you desire, you attract what you are, and that signifies that, while your intellect perpetuates in operating in the aged paradigms, regardless of how much you contend, exert, or desire, the outcomes will be the identical, but at the moment in which you determine to reprogram your internal vibration, everything around you will commence to reorganize. Now, if you perceive that this video awakened you, be cognizant that the subsequent stride is proximate. A novel video is surfacing on the display now, and within it, you will ascend one more gradation in your evolution of sagacity. You will transition to being 1% superior to what you are now, and that, my companion, is already the commencement of an extraordinary transformation. Acknowledgement for being here. I await you there, in the subsequent video.